Okay, in this video I will be finishing my attic insulation. I did get a new light for this. It's a Craftsman. I got it from Lowe's, half price. Throw a link in the description. One thing I didn't show was just stapling in these depth gauges for the attic insulation. They only had 2 at Lowe's, so I made a whole bunch based off the template, using the actual manufactured ones as a template. I got the construction paper at dollar store and spent my day doing some crafts. So you can see the attic is at the very best R30. Like the best spots in my attic are an R30. So in fact, I would say on average, it's probably more at an R25, maybe even less. Like there's spots where it's down to like R10. And my opinion of this blown in fiberglass is if you're down at like R10, you basically have nothing. Because there's so little insulation there and it's so light and fluffy. So I'm definitely going to increase this. This is kind of my last step for the attic. And you can see the template I made. So I'm using an Owens Corning machine and actually Owens Corning pink insulation. I like this machine. It's got a remote so you can turn it on and off from the attic. You do need somebody downstairs or outside. I did it in the garage, just actually feeding the bales of the insulation into the machine. There's lots of videos on that, and in fact, Owens Corning has a pretty good video showing how to use their machines, so I didn't really bother with that. But suffice it to say, it's actually a rainy day, so it's only maybe 20 degrees Celsius in the attic, a really great temperature to work at. And this thing really blows pretty fast once it gets going. The person manning the machine really needs to be on top of it and keep pushing the bales of insulation into the machine. They also need to make sure that it doesn't get hung up so that the machine's just spinning, but the insulation's not dropping down at all. But you can see it goes pretty quickly. It does blow air if the person working the machine doesn't pay attention, but when it blows air, you can just use that time to like sort of level things off a little bit, so it's not bad. I picked this brand over John's Manville or whatever it's called from Lowe's, mainly because Lowe's just couldn't get their machines together. They were absolute shambles. I went to 2 different Lowe's and they couldn't cobble together one machine. So it was pretty frustrating. I probably spent 3 hours at Lowe's watching them fumble with 2 different machines at 2 different locations just because the insulation was a little bit cheaper. But then I gave up on it. I basically spent more time at Lowe's watching them try to put a machine together than it took me to do this whole job, which was very frustrating. And as a result, I went to Home Depot. I did spend, I don't know, maybe $100 more, 150 Canadian more for the insulation. In both cases, the machine rental for 24 hours is free if you get 10 bags of the insulation or whatever it is. You do get the free rental. A couple things I'll point out here. I am wearing gloves. I do have a dust mask on. I do have a headlight on because we've been having power outages in the area and I didn't want to be up there blowing insulation and have a power outage. That would be absolutely terrible. I have long pants on, long shirt on. I'm not wearing goggles. Maybe that would be recommended. But quite honestly, I really did not find this stuff was very dusty. It blew in and pretty much sat flat with not a great deal of dust hanging in the air. Obviously, there'll be some dust, but I didn't get itchy at all. So it was pretty good overall. This attic is 1,000 square feet, give or take a little bit. So I used 12 bags of insulation and that moved me from an R20 to a very decisive R40, and in fact most of it is much closer to R50 than it is R40 when I'm done. So a couple of words of warning: if you're spraying right into the corner, you need to be a little bit careful because it actually has a tendency to push the insulation out of the corner just from the air pressure. A couple of useful tricks I found is just put your hand in front of the hose a little bit, obviously with a gloved hand, and that sort of calms down the flow a little bit and allows you to be a little more directive. If you're spraying something really close to you, without your hand in front of it, it will just blast the insulation out of the way. The other sort of trick I found was to do a bit of a redirect, either off the ceiling or one of the joists, basically anything to sort of slow down the spray. And then the big thing to watch out for is that you don't get the insulation into your actual vent baffles. So there you can see I'm using a piece of plywood to sort of redirect it as well, and just like I said, calm down the airflow, or using the ceiling to make it drop in there like snow. To do my main portion of the attic, I would say it took less than 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half. and that's about it. So very fast, not very difficult. Obviously you wouldn't want to do this on a hot day, but I would say to add an R20 to your attic for something like this, 1,000 square feet, 2 hours is more than enough time as long as you have somebody down there to help you and feed the machine the whole time. And for me, I'm doing this mainly for comfort reasons. I don't find my electricity bill is very high. However, I do find the second floor in the summer is extremely hot, and in the winter is much colder than the main floor. So once you're into the last stages, it is a little difficult to spray right around the entrance to your attic. And this is a time where I really put that hand in front of the hose so it would kind of drop down sort of directly in front of you. If you spray straight down, it kind of bunches up and packs in pretty deep, or it blows everything out of the way. So definitely using your hand or a redirect off the ceiling or something is helpful. It is also helpful to have a piece of plywood up there to just drop over the access to your attic so that you don't have a ton of insulation drop into your closet or wherever it is. So a couple little things, but overall super easy, super fast, and I'm very happy with how it set up. All things considered, I don't think it could have gone very much better. And this is the end result. Like I said, I was aiming for a very decisive R40, and I would say I definitely achieved it. You can see most of my markers are actually closer to R50. Couple in the back there, maybe a little bit closer to R40, that's fine. But basically all the R40 is covered up, and then generally speaking, it's really close to that R50 level. So hopefully I'm achieving about an R45. I guess I could come back later and spray another 6 or 7 bags in here, but quite frankly, I don't think there's really a need to be at R60, considering I was cruising at a very sketchy R20 previously. This should actually make a really big difference in the attic temperature. A couple of things to point out. I did not really use too much of the tuck tape, and I didn't really use spray foam insulation. And the reason for that is that there's a plastic vapor barrier across my entire floor. In addition to that, there's actually very few lights in my second floor because this house is from the 80s and they decided they didn't want ceiling lights for some strange reason. So I don't really have too many penetrations. However, if you do not have that vapor barrier and you have a whole bunch of penetrations into your attic, it may be a good idea to come around with either the tape or the spray foam and just seal up those penetrations. Obviously you want to do that air sealing as well, but in my case, I exposed everything, wasn't really required. Anyway, thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.